Hello and welcome back to the stars, everybody. Welcome back to Starfield, where today we're going to be taking a look at the Va'Ruun Starshard. This is probably the most late game handgun in the game, and this one is one of two particle pistols in the game, and one of only a handful of particle weapons throughout the game. So the Va'Ruun Starshard does kind of look like an alien star pistol, which is pretty cool. This one is actually quite strong, as you would kind of expect it for being such a late game weapon. For the base stats of the Va'Ruun Starshard, this one is a particle weapon, so it has both ballistic damage and energy damage, which also means that it counts towards any perks that give damage towards either of those or both of them. So for damage, this one does 26 physical damage and it does 80 energy damage. This one hits incredibly hard for a handgun. It is the hardest hitting handgun in the game, at least shot for shot. Some other guns can out damage it, like the mag shot can, if it's a full auto one. A couple other ones can too, but the Va'Ruun Starshard does have really high damage and pretty high damage per second. This one uses the light particle fuse, which this one and the Nova Light, the other particle pistol, are the only ones that use this type of ammunition. So it is somewhat in competition with that, but I would say the Starshard is generally outshining the Nova Light in a lot of areas. This one holds 12 rounds in it by default, which is fine. This one has a 12 rate of fire, so not super fast, but not terribly slow either. This one has 30 meters of effective range, 10 more meters than most pistols do, which is pretty cool. This one has very high accuracy as well for a handgun. That's always great as well. And this one weighs 1 weight, so doesn't weigh very much like a handgun. The base stats of this gun are quite good overall, just kind of across the board. For the general pros of the Starshard, this one has very high damage, it has very high damage per second, and it has pretty high accuracy as well as decent range for a pistol. It has a lot going for it just in the pros. For cons, this one, its only real con is that it's a very rare gun. The Va'Ruun Starshard is probably the most rare pistol out of any of the pistols. I find it the least often. I don't think I've ever found a legendary version of one of these. I think I've only found a couple of epics, and I found a lot of rares, but not any legendary options, at least that I can remember. Maybe I had, maybe it didn't have very many good things on it, so I sold it, but that would be the only time that I probably would sell this. On my handgun tier list, I put the Va'Ruun Starshard up into S tier, and I would keep it in S tier. The Va'Ruun Starshard is probably the best overall handgun, kind of at everything in the game. The particle weapons in this game tend to be very strong because they do count for so many perks, because they count towards the particle weapon perk, energy weapon perk, ballistic perk, and then whatever damage type they are. So in this case, pistols. It's also a semi-automatic weapon, so it counts towards that as well. All of those are really, really good for a weapon like this. Now let's talk about a modded version and where I would put that on the tier list. So for mods, starting out of the barrel, we can have a long barrel on this, and I would recommend you just put that one on there. This gets you better accuracy, better recoil reduction, and gives you better range overall. It's better than the standard barrel in most cases. Then for a laser, put the recon laser on here, just like we always say. If it can have a recon laser, it's going to be better than the regular lasers. So throw that on there if you can. If not, and you can't put a laser on this, it's not a huge deal. It'll just up the accuracy, so it's just kind of whatever. Then for optics, you can pick whatever optics you would like for this one. Since this one can't have a scope, this one does have personal preference for optics. You can go with the regular iron sights, you can go with the glow sights, which is the one that I chose, or you can go with the reflex sight. Pick whichever one of these you like the most and just use that one. Some people really like the reflex, some people really like the glow sights. I would say either of those are technically an upgrade over the iron sights because the glow sights are just easier to see. So I would use that one. Then for a muzzle, we have 3 options. You can either go with a focus nozzle to give you better accuracy, which the Starshard really doesn't need, but it's kind of cool to have. Focus nozzle, which gives you more damage with the weapon and more headshot damage, as well as longer range. That one can be pretty good, and that would be one of the ones I'd recommend. The other one would be the spread nozzle, which turns this into kind of a shotgun. This seems to fire out about 3 or 4 shots at a time every time that you shoot this. They do stay fairly close together, so even at long range, it's not hard to put this on targets. But I did actually like the spread nozzle quite a bit, and that's the one that I went with. But if you want a more accurate weapon or a more consistent weapon, then the focus nozzle would probably be a better option for you. Then for magazine and battery, we can put Annihilator rounds into this, so we're going to put the War Crime rounds into our gun because they are very, very strong. This one produces disease-like abilities on enemies that then go and spread to other enemies, and that can actually be a problem in city areas if you're shooting around civilians. The Annihilator rounds will kill civilians too, so just don't use this, or don't use the Annihilator rounds in this instance if you are shooting around civilians, because it will kill them. Our other option is a large magazine, which could work well too. It's fine with the magazine that it has. Holding 12 rounds is perfectly fine. I think this goes up to 18 rounds in the gun, and that's also fine. Just depends on if you want that. I just put the Annihilator rounds in mine, and it works really well against enemies, but again, be careful civilians with the War Crime rounds. Then for an internal, we either have Overclocked or an Amplifier. Amplifier gets us even more damage on this weapon. Overclocked gives us a faster rate of fire. I went with Overclocked. This weapon doesn't shoot super quick, and having it shoot a little bit faster makes it feel more consistent. You don't really need damage on this weapon because it already has a really high amount, but if you want to one-shot stuff, then by all means take the Amplifier. And then for a receiver, we either have the semi-automatic receiver or the burst fire receiver. Burst fire is 2-round burst, and this does actually nerf your damage. You also don't technically have like the one, I think it's marksmanship, that lets you have more damage with a semi-automatic weapon. It depends on what you want here. If you want the burst fire, it's perfectly fine. It doesn't nerf your damage that much, and it's still pretty good. If you don't like that and you want semi-auto, you can go with that. That's what I went with, but this one's totally your call. With all these options thrown into the Starshard, this is probably the best handgun in the game, and I would put this one up into the S plus tier. It is probably going to be, well, it is the only handgun that is going to be up into the S plus tier, because I think that it definitely outscales all the other weapons in their categories. It is really strong. It does very well at just about everything. It fits the role really well for a general purpose handgun. It also kind of feels like a shotgun too with the spread nozzle on there, so you just got your little pocket shotgun that actually has really long range, and it even has the Annihilator rounds on there, so, you know, War Crimes, woo, I guess. I don't know if we're gonna celebrate that in games. In games, it's fine. Now, there is one unique version of the Starshard. You can only get this on New Game Plus, and you can only get it from the Starborn vendor, which is a random event that can happen after the Starborn are introduced. I wasn't able to find them for this video, so we're just going to talk about it. This is called the Terror Inflictor, which is a unique version that is rare. It has one effect, and it has some mods. For the mods, it has burst fire, a long barrel, overclocked, and a reflex sight on it, which is all pretty decent for this type of weapon. Nothing crazy, but it is a modded out weapon, so that's kind of cool. And this weapon's one effect is demoralizing, which doesn't really matter. Demoralizing is probably one of the worst effects in the game. This just makes it so enemies essentially will flee from you if you shoot them with this. But with the way I play the game, I usually just shoot something until it's dead. And usually I don't notice if the demoralizing effect is actually even kicking in. So this is one weapon that I just would say don't really go out of your way for unless you rush the main storyline on New Game Plus and then you end up running into the Starborn vendor. So if you don't have a unique Starshard, you could buy this one, assuming you got the credits for it, because everything they sell is extremely expensive. So that brings us to the question, should you use the Starshard? I would say yeah. If you're using a pistol build or just a general purpose build, it's going to be fantastic for you. It's going to be one of your best handguns to run around with. It does really well against everything. It does well at really long range. If you're using a pistol only build, this is probably going to be like one of the end game guns that you're going for. It's probably going to be this, your Razorback, and like your mag shot or something. Maybe a 2311 as well, because assuming you can find ammo for it, that one's also really good. The Starshard I find to be really, really nice. I wish there was more particle weapons in the game. Maybe there will be with DLCs down the road. Who knows? Hopefully we get more particle weapons and more energy weapons just as a total. Thank you guys so very much for watching this. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and tell me your thoughts on the Va'Ruun Starshard down in the comments below, and I will catch you guys next time. Bye-bye, everybody!